I'm here tonight with Tom Santino, and I don't even know what episode this is, five, six, seven, something like that, because I'm not too concerned about it. I'll figure that out as I upload it. But I appreciate our audience being back with us, or if you're listening to these in succession, hope you're enjoying what you've heard. And our guest that I'm going to interview is Tom Santino. And Tommy, before we started the podcast tonight, or before I got on here with you, I calculated how many years we've known each other. Do you know how many it is?
I'm afraid to ask. Okay, yeah, it's more than 40. It's about that. Yeah,
41. Yeah, 41. It's like
41. Yeah.
it's unbelievable. So I've known Tommy since we marched together in Suncoast Sound, the drum corps, and pageantry arts. I've known him since then, and we became pretty close friends right off the start, from what I can remember, in on bus two, and
Us too. Love you.
and and have been and really been close ever since. So Tommy, like how I like to start this is in Tommy's we'll talk about all this. He's a school administrator. He was a high school band director, a middle school band director, and then a what kind of? And you're an administrator now for
Yes. Yeah. So I'm an assistant principal. I started my administrative journey in high school. So I did 6 years of high school assistant principal at Flanagan High School, MacArthur High School here in Broward County. And then for about the past, I think I'm going into year 13 with adult education. So we're part of a workforce education. So we're still Broward County Public Schools. I'm still a Broward County Public School administrator. So my technical title is assistant principal over workforce education.
Got it.
So,
All right,
yeah.
we're gonna talk about how you got to that in a little bit, because I think it's a pretty interesting route. So Tommy, you were originally from New York, is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Brooklyn, but the more I visited back, and the more of my family I know that spent their lives there, I don't feel connected with being a New Yorker, let's say a New Yorker, you know. Yeah. So my family moved us to Miami when I was almost 5 years old. So I grew up in North Miami and spent most of my life, I ventured away at different parts of my life to Tampa, a little bit of California, back to Tampa, and then this has pretty much been my home for most of my life.
South Florida.
South Florida. Yeah, I'm in Hollywood, between Fort Lauderdale and Miami right now.
Yeah, not far from the airport. You're easy to get to from the airport.
I am.
I know that. So, okay, so just so our listeners understand, so your undergraduate is music education, correct? You did that at USF?
Yes, my undergraduate was in music ed at USF, and then my graduate work for educational leadership was through Nova Southeastern here in Davie.
And when you were at USF in Tampa, was that the Jerry Junkin days?
Yeah, so it was kind of a transitionary period. So I got there, in the fall of '83, and we had a Stanley DeRusha, actually, and before him was oh man,
Was it
Rich
wasn't he there?
Wagner, Richard. So yeah. I'm sorry for missing, but DeRusha was there for about a year, and then Jerry Junkin came in, and he was there most of my time as far as the symphonic end of things at USF. And then Chuck Owen ran the jazz program. So those were my influences during that time. And then when Mallory Thompson came in, I was just going into my intern period. So I might have played with the wind ensemble one time under her during that period, one or two times. But you look at those folks, and it's quite a
that university, which I live 15, 20 minutes from. It's amazing the amount of talent that's come through there and has been there and is still there.
Yeah, and the people, the recording artists and clinicians and just major people that they have had come through, and some of the jazz symposiums and the honor festivals. It really, the exposure that I got there was, you wouldn't think it, at USF, especially back then. the big powerhouses in the state were, FSU's music program, UF, University of Miami for music engineering and jazz, but USF really offered so much, really
Yeah,
did.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to come back in your journey in a second, and I
Hmm.
mentioned it a little bit before we actually got on live on the podcast. Is the one of the besides I have so much respect for you as a human being and as an educator, and you're one of my dearest friends. Besides that, all of that,
Mutual.
I wanted to I, I wanted to interview you for the purposes of this leadership podcast for music education from the standpoint that I've just so the listeners know, when Tommy opened Braddock High School in Miami, I got to be a part of that with him in a lot of ways, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Working with the program, also when I was at the Boston Crusaders, all the era of time I was there, he was probably the brass caption head. I think all but like 2 years. I think you were the brass caption of the organization. In fact, you
Big,
brought me.
yeah, big chunk of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
we had
but
the opportunity to work together. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. No, no, no. You just, as you're mentioning each of these organizations, I can't help but smile and laugh because I just keep thinking of so much of the learning that I received from you, and then some of the moments, the aha moments throughout the way. Um, and I heard you speak last night on the marching roundtable with Tim Hinton, and you talked a lot about. I didn't want to, I'm not trying to flip this into your interview, but
Please,
but
please.
but really, yeah, yeah. But you spoke a lot about to Tim Hinton about your younger formative years and things you would have done differently. And I think that was the thrust of it. Were the three, so three things that you'd like to tell your younger self or younger educators.
Yeah.
And boy, I don't know what I would have done those first 6 months at Braddock, and then even throughout my development. People like yourself and Gino and the Dick Dunscombs from FIU and Michelle Fernandez, those folks. Can't thank them enough. But you really you held my hand. I mean, I was, just like you spoke last night. I was a kid, and I knew drum corps. I knew drum corps, and I knew pageantry. And I felt like I knew the personalization side of things, but the music and the listening and just that getting your hands wet. Um, we are not far apart in age. I think we're like a year apart in age, but as far as music conducting and experience at that time, you had started way before I did. You really were,
Well,
much more of a.
I was fortunate because Greg Martin let me do a lot
Mm,
of his program when he was at Lake Cal. I
yeah.
had great experience, student teaching with Cindy Barry at Lake Brantley in Orlando.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
I taught by that time when I started doing stuff with you at Braddock. I had already taught probably 5 or 6 years at that point because I was like, boom, boom, boom. In fact, I didn't even march. One of the years I could march a drum corps to try to get done faster. But I appreciate the kind words. I think that what as I was about to say is one of the things that you do better than almost anybody I know is like setting up culture in the program, setting up culture among the students, building a good camaraderie with the faculty, people you're working with, whether it's choral director in the same department or it's APs like you are now, and all that type of thing. And like I always admired that because as you heard on the podcast, and I was talking to Tim Hinton, I'm like, boom, 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 boom. I've got to get things done as fast as
Mm,
I can. I'm trampling over people and everything else in the process. And your perspective, as far as staying calm, staying grounded, and like the kids, and I'm just telling the listeners this, the kids love Tommy. Like what his band students loved him, the drum corps students loved him.
mm,
Like, I mean, he could get incredible things out of those programs. The symphonic groups, the jazz band, the marching band, when we were teaching drum corps together, but he never raised his voice. I can't to this
mm,
day remember him raising his voice. He made them feel very comfortable in their skin and who they were as young adults. And like I think that's kind of Tommy the direction I want to go with you this evening, at least for this, is I mean, we can go in a lot of other directions as well,
mm.
but I mean, I'm asking not just because we're talking on a podcast. I'm asking you that because I admire that aspect of what you're able to do as an educator. in setting up that kind of culture. How where does that come from? Is that innate? Is it inherent? Did you go through scenarios when you were in band growing up that were,
Mm.
that, and you want to do the opposite? Where did that culminate?
Right, right. Well, I appreciate that, and and I think that is, I could tell you a lot of my weaknesses, but I think that is a strength, and I think that is something that we all find our strength that kind of helps us grow and helps us develop others. And for me, I think that may have come out of insecurity as a younger performer and as a younger teacher, that I tended to not be so quick to say, hey, this is how it is, and this is what, I definitely, grounded, and we all change our mind. I mean, I think that's good. Is that as we go, it's okay. This these criteria of teaching, the way we tune an ensemble, the way we balance, the steps and sequencing, those things change because of trial and error, and we find what gets us to our end place. But I think that the ability to try to make others feel comfortable, I think, was really important for me, because I think that's what made me stay involved in music and involved in any kind of an organization, was the feeling that I belonged. And so I really, even now with my teachers that work under me and the students, um, I really want them to feel that they're wanted, and that they count. That their opinion counts, and the people that I've had come and work with me, I really like to try to put the ego aside. And I did here. I get said again. It's another thing you talked about last night, and just try to see what direction they take it in, with guardrails and boundaries and stuff. But because I think there's a lot more to learn that way. And for me, I think that may have come out of my own not knowing, my own insecurity, as to whether this is the right way to go, um, and then kind of be a little more decisive on, this is how I want to approach it next year and the year after and the year after. Um, so I think that really kind of empowered some of those groups, and helped some of those students and some of those younger instructors and so on, to develop and really help the ensemble, and helped people to feel like that they're stakeholders, that they have a part of it.
Valued.
Yeah, that they're valued. Right, right. And for me, that always, was the most important thing. It's one of those, you I see it in schools all the time, and I've used this lately for some reason. It keeps coming up. Um, the poster in this, it says, 30 years from now, child may not know what you taught them, but they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And it sounds cliche. It sounds like, but really, it's what those that led me. I always, what I go back to is how they made me feel. When I think of John Filoni, my band director was like a father figure. I didn't have a dad, and the circle of band kids kept me in school, and it kept me focused. And um, and I remember how he made me feel. I remember how Robert Smith, made me feel, and Frank. I know we talked a lot about them. And then later on, in the drum corps side of the house, Wayne Downey and Jack Meehan, and so many, Russell Stanton, so many different instructors that have, you know, touched you. I think the way that they make you feel is what you want to share. That motivation, that love for something, and music is kind of the instrument to that. And these on, and I don't know. For me, that's just always been important.
I know. I remember when we were, you were at Boston Crusaders before me. In fact, you and I guess I would say you and Al Murray is who brought me into that at that point in time,
Yeah.
which blessing in disguise. But I remember us having conversations about, like, in drum corps, obviously we're dealing with an older student. Typically they're more college age, some high school, but some college. and we were talking a lot about how to make them feel like they're being treated like young adults instead of feeling like they're little kids. And I learned a lot from you in that process because you know again, you have an eloquent way of being able to deliver a standard and an expectation at the
Mm.
same time of being able to make the student feel like you said, they're valued, their opinion matters, and they're respected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's that fine line too, because a lot of the ensembles that we first taught, I mean, or were a part of, Suncoast Sound, our average age was 16.
Remember? Yeah.
And then I remember, yeah, the first year of Magic, you and I were on that staff together, and that was a bunch of young kids. But there comes that line, and now you see it. I don't know if it's just the way leadership has developed in high schools, but you see a program like a Tarpon Springs, or or an Avon, or somebody like that, and that they are more empowered to be adults than I think we were back then. I think we were kind of taught, you treat them like high school kids, and you dictate, this is how it is. And maybe that some of that is why we have developed the leadership thing over time. But I remember that for me, that was a pivotal moment of taking ownership, when I felt like I was treated more like an adult, than like a child. And so I think, hopefully, that's what, I remember the growing pains of doing that. And then man, it somehow ended up at Boston. Like you said, it wasn't a destination, but I got there via the YEA folks and Al Murray, and then I reached out to you, and that really, something that happened that we never ever thought could be possible,
Yeah.
and just reinvented how you do things. Let's go. We don't have a recruitment base. Let's go to where the kids are. you know
Well,
Simple things
I
like that.
find with things like whether it's Boston or what we've done at Tarpon or any of these other programs, like I don't think you expect. I think those happen out of like a lot of stars aligning the right way at the right time with the right people with the right personalities. It's not like
Mm.
very rarely, in drum corps world, like Star of Indiana is one of the few organizations that I've seen where like they were plotted and planned to be what they were going to
Mm.
be, and it came right
Mhm.
to. I think a lot of these other things just kind of happen, not happenstance, because there's obviously a plan, but
Right.
again, like you said, what we were able to do with Boston, and I credit you to so much of that. I credit Dan and Melissa Greer to so much of that. Jim
Oh,
Cronin to
yeah. Jim
uh,
Cronin,
all those people, that had so much. Mike Woodall, all those people that were
Mike Whittle, Steve Dolly.
that stuff. But Braddock to me is an interesting. It just, I mean, when I look, it's like an interesting case study, if you will, right? Because you opened that school like it didn't exist, and
Mm.
you started from literal scratch, and that was your first. Was it your first job?
Yeah, I taught for 6 months. You remember this, Howard?
I
I had my my assignment
remember
was
right when you said it. I remember
Thomas
because I came to
Jefferson.
play piano for you when you were.
Yeah, yeah, Thomas Jefferson, junior high school, because we had ninth graders, and there was not a band job open. Kathy Leibinger, who went on to be our FBA district chair,
Yeah.
she was getting the band job, and she had drama and chorus. So I had, 4 sections of drama and 2 chorus sections, and I did not know what the heck I was doing at all. And I remember you came in, and I said, Howard, I got to put on a talent show.
I remember.
And yeah,
I,
yeah, there's 3 singers that know what they're doing, and so I need something where the back, and you helped me kind of rescore some choral pieces, and you came in. I think you played piano for the you were the
I did.
piano accompanist.
I did. I remember this whole thing. I just can't remember where it was in the succession because of time.
Right,
I did, so that
right.
was that right before Braddock? Because that was right. Like,
Yes,
okay.
yes. It was halfway through the school year, and my plan was to be. I wanted a high school just like you did, right out of college,
Yeah.
And the music supervisor at the time, Marilyn Van Sager, got, rest in peace. She was amazing, but she did not want, and probably rightfully so, did not want newly graduated music educators to take high school positions. So she really didn't encourage me the hire, at Braddock, but it ended up being a two-person position. They made it. They brought in Myra Cobia from W.R.
So I
Thomas.
did not realize that Steve Rivera. I don't know if you heard on Steve's
I
podcast.
heard
And I'm like, oh, you have Myra. Like,
in Myra Cobia, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then Steve ended up at Southwest,
Right.
yeah. And so it's just crazy how the worlds collide. And the folks that are listening to this, I'm sure they're going to have the same 6 degrees of separation. But yeah, so that's how it actually it came, that the principal there wanted me, and the district really pushed for Myra, and it was logical because she was the main feeder, but she didn't want anything to do with marching band or jazz band. So it was a good fit, and we ended up
It was a
we had a
great.
yeah we ended up with a really good working relationship. And you were a really good glue for that, because I think I still didn't have that respect yet, but you came in and you did so much there with the leadership development of that program, and the development of myself and the students, and really, you know, helped create a kind of what you've done at Tarpon, but we were way earlier than Tarpon. I mean, this was a rock and a piece of paper and a stick, and we had to make a band. No booster program. Um, so
Remember.
really, I leaned heavily on you for a lot of that, and I'm so thankful for that. But like I said, I have to say it laughing because there was so many fun times along the way.
Lots of
It was, yeah,
fun.
yeah.
But what I loved, what you did there was you built a quality program very quickly. It had all
Mm,
aspects. It's building a culture with the students. It's also building a culture with the boosters. And I did
mm.
talk about that on the Tim Hinton thing that you're referring to, myself, because that's hard to do when you're young, because everybody
Yeah,
seemed like 20 years old, even though they were like 40, and we're like 20.
right.
So
Yeah,
so but
it's
I mean,
it's hard to do when you're young, but it's also, the boosters, even the boosters, you had parents that the previous year, we had 9th, 10th, and we did have 11th graders.
mm,
And, they were Southwest, Doug Pfeiffer, and that whole regime, they were boosters for that kind of program. And they were, really a competitive style band in Dade County. And there, back then, Dade County was kind of split. It wasn't a lot of competitive style. There was about 50-50. Then you had parents from Sunset and a couple parents from Coral Park, and the cultures of those communities and those bands and those schools were completely different. So now you
yeah,
throw them in a soup, and you've got kids that are from the different programs, and well, Mr. Pfeiffer did it this way, and Mr. So and so did it this way, and you're the new band director, and trying to bring these parents from different styles of the programs together
right.
was, yeah, it was another, it was insane. Why I decided to do that, I cannot tell you. But I'm glad I did it. But now, really looking back on it now, there was that added little thing to the mix. Is,
Yeah.
the culture wasn't a culture yet at all. I didn't step into one.
No, I get it, but I remember a lot
Mm.
of great parents there with you, and
Boy, yeah, they
and
gelled quick, and yeah,
and yeah, and students. I mean, that's what I mean when you think of the grand scheme for that program, for the amount of years you were there, which was like 8, 9, something like that,
Se
7, 8.
well, it was 7, yeah, it was 7, and then I was the middle. They opened a new middle school, and I had gone to the middle school, for a year, that was to feed into Braddock, and many of those Boston Crusader kids and Braddock kids were in that middle school band, actually, the Harry Freemans and Ralph Valencia, who's on tour with Pitbull now, was in our Boston Crusader drum line, and,
Right.
yeah, yeah, came from the middle
Yeah.
school. But yeah, yeah, it was amazing. By year 2 to 3, it felt like we had an identity and a culture and a way.
No, I know, and the Winter Guard, all that
Yeah,
stuff. So if I guess in this phase of what we're talking about, if I'm somebody listening to this and I'm starting starting a new program like that, um, what would you say are the top 3 4 things you should really hone in on to set themselves up for success when it comes to And I know I'm asking a loaded question, but
Mm,
student or parent organization. You again, you had a great relationship with the administration. I remember that vividly. I mean, what should they
mm,
be thinking about in that process?
yeah. Um, Listen, do a lot of listening, and come in with this mindset of flexibility. And you talk about the mindset of curiosity and that kind of thing. Really listen to what it is they came from, and what it is they want, what they are expecting it to get out of this. So um, it's you've got to come to it with that vision of where you want to be, but maybe it's not going to happen this first year. So you're gathering that data, let's say, and you're gathering all that, and you're saying, okay, here's what we want to do year one is to, maybe we're not as competitive of a group as we want to be, or maybe we're able to fundraise, we're able to get the boosters on the same page. We're able to go to festival, for maybe we're get comments only. Maybe we can go and get ratings depending on what things look like. But really listen and and communicate. Because I think that is kind of the young program issue and the young teacher issue, is that we expect the boosters to be mind readers. The administration, I've fall that pitfall too, where you just don't let them know what you're doing, and then it turns into this whole, you had kids here on a Saturday, and I mean, you know, so really communicate, over communicate, and that's one of the things I think you do best is communication, and I've tried to learn that from you too. Is that leadership chain is your voice. And I mean, we didn't have social media and all
Yeah.
these different platforms of groups that you can just open your phone and you know but even with those, it's that personalization. It's making sure that those leaders are having real-time conversations with the students that are in alignment with the real-time conversations that are happening with the parents, that are in alignment with the administration, understanding where, what the program's goals are for the year. So that communication piece, and make adjustments, communicate and assess, and yeah, those are big ones, I think.
What would you what would you have done in that stretch, like your full-time music educator prior to administrator, let's call it that stretch? What would you have done differently, do you think, during that stretch of time, if anything?
Mm. Uh, I feel like, again, as I was younger, it was kind of existing in a silo a little bit, that I felt like you have to prioritize. So for me, I think the ego takes over, and I wanted to have my first superior in jazz. And when we got that, I wanted to have that first superior in concert or in marching. And sometimes you run with the blinders on, and I think I would have opened that up a little bit, and did a little bit more listening, because my priority was to sharpen my tool as a conductor and as a clinician, because that's what I felt I was judged on, and my own persona, ego, whatever, wasn't ready to not feel like, oh, okay, he's got a clue, he understands what he's doing. So I may have sacrificed some of those relationships. And I did get along with administration, but there was times when I didn't. I mean, luckily I had an amazing principal. um, and it's funny, so coincidental. I got a text from Dean Broadbent today
Mhm.
that he has a guard parent whose father was one of the main principal that was at Braddock, Fred Bertani. And And it's funny that because he really paved the way for me. The first principal that was there was a first year high school principal, and she did not want to get herself in trouble with the district. So there were no keys to the school. There were so many, you couldn't do anything right.
Get a
When
lot
Fred
of
Bertani, yeah, when Fred Bertani got there, he had been an area director, and he was just like, Tom, what can I do to help you be more successful? But but if you're in a situation where you're developing that relationship with administration, you've got to put the ego on the shelf a bit and not be so concerned that yes, you want to know you want to sharpen your tool, you want to know the score, you want to know the literature, you want to know how you want to develop the ears and be great at all that, but don't ignore those other aspects. That's what I would have done differently.
No, I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you. Did do a lot of that, at least what I could see. Um,
Mhm.
and then how do you make the student feel valued? How do you make them feel like their voice matters? Uh, you
Mhm.
know, like I said, I very few educators that I've worked with understand and do that at the level you do. I mean, I think that's why. Well, it's one of the
Yeah.
many kids love you, but I just feel like you understand the students so well from that standpoint. And I don't know,
Mhm.
I might be being unfair asking you to put that into words, but I'm just hoping you
Mhm.
can.
I feel like the thing that I started to develop is when I would reflect on what made me feel valued. I remember coming off of performances sometimes, and this really, I noticed this more in drum corps, and it even started when I was in the Florida Wave. Um, we had an instructor, Pete Bernayko, and he was right out of just aged out of the Blue Devils, and he would you'd be by the food truck or whatever. We didn't have a food truck. We were be by the table with the
Some,
peanut butter and jelly,
someone's drunk.
the trunk of somebody's car having a
Right.
cracker, right? And he would say, so how did you do tonight? What do you feel about that, and I was like, wow, you wanted to know how I felt about the performance. Oh, and then that became a thing, and I remember all the years at Suncoast and the Blue Devils, and so then I felt like that really empowered me. So I really tried to do that in some of those early years at Braddock, and it didn't have to be official. Yeah, we would meet as a section, and the whole group, and then you break off and then go with your instructional staff, whatever. But a lot of times it's those one-on-ones. How did you feel about that? And I didn't always go to the section leader. Sometimes I went to the third trumpet and the second clarinet and said, how did you feel, about that? What did you what did you think? How did that make you feel? Just to get their input, and then those personalities that are willing to share out too. So sometimes in group conversation, when you meet with the group and let them share out what they, so a lot of it was that, and I really think that goes a long way. It seems like a little thing, but I really feel like it goes a long way.
Because yeah, it's huge. It goes huge. I think it goes all the way back to when you said listen and then communicate. Listen and then communicate.
Right.
What I'm finding is in these latter years of my career that perspectives teaching me, like I said with the Tim Hinton thing, to slow down. Um, I feel I feel kind of like an emeritus, if you will, in a lot of ways, in a lot of my roles. I mean, I still actively teach leadership. I still actively teach music and all these different, like tarpon and things like that. But from the same standpoint. I went in the other night and not the other night, about a week ago, and worked with Chip Wood. He's at Steinbrenner High School. He's been a friend of ours for years. I
Oh
went with
yeah.
the Monica Ensemble because they're getting ready for district MPA and FBA assessments, and I'm not in front of ensembles that much these days, just because of my work and my stuff, and I've got so many
Mm,
different. So it just when you kind of have that more of an outside perspective as far as what you're doing, it makes you really reflect more on a lot of what you have done and what you've done throughout your career. And in Boston, it's mind-boggling for me because I'm there, working with Gino and Chris Holland and those
mhm,
guys, Colin and whatnot, and I feel I love what I'm doing with them because I get to teach the leadership and work with the guard captains and the drum majors and section leaders and all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
But I also like being kind of an external ear for them as far as not so much honestly, not on the field, off the field, the culture,
mm,
the functionality, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and things like that, and
yeah,
caused me to be very reflective now and from what I was able to do with that organization back, when we were there. Um,
yeah. Because so much of that really determines the success in the performance or on the field. It is that culture. It's what's going on off the field. Because let's face it. I mean, that's a snapshot. That 10, 11 minutes, and it's a snapshot of what's going on. But those that cultural thing, that that's in place. What's going on off the field is the other 23 and a half hours a day. It's really
well, and so many things affect that. You
yeah.
know, how the how we treat each other, how we
Hmm.
how we listen to each other, how and patriarch and how the kids are fed, how they function, how they travel, all those things, financially, fundraising,
Yeah.
boards, boosters, all that kind of stuff. All those things all enter into that, and you know, like I said, I mean, being able to have perspective to look at those things, slow down, give good assessment to that, and then think before you act is really good. That's why I loved working with you because we were good
Mm,
sounding boards for each other. Like, what do you think of this? Well, what do you think?
yeah.
Like I
Right,
think.
right. And yeah, we weren't afraid to go back and forth and just, let's imagine it this way.
Mhm.
And you've always been open with that. And I felt like I've always been open with that too, with each other. And I think that a lot of folks, you find your creative uh, partner, somebody you can create with. Hopefully, there's more of those than not. But when you find that, that's really important because that if you don't have that kind of relationship, the way that the relationship that we had as working professionals together, you just don't make any ground, and you close all the possibilities out. And I
Yeah.
really think a lot of the great moments of alignment, a lot of that 2000 Boston show, a lot of that was being open, that not only between you and I, but the whole, the other captions as well, to just say, okay, what if it didn't do this? And what if we went into Carmen and then it went back into, like, there was so many things where forks in the road. But if we didn't have that maturity or ability to do that, we would have missed out, because that really
Well,
was a special time.
100%. But it's like you said earlier on this podcast, and what we've talked about before. It's like being able to take your ego off the table. I mean, that's hard to do, and
Mm,
but I do think it yields a lot of success in a lot of different ways. But and it also, I think the kids feel that as well when they
yeah.
see the collaboration happening like that. They see a vision being able to come to life. I think the students feel that as well, and it's interesting because it's not always about the talent. It has a lot to do with the drive, passion, and
Yeah.
chemistry.
Yeah, it usually does. Yeah. The most talented group is usually not the group that ends up winning, or it can be, but it's the group where even the staff, the most talented staff, does not yield the highest performing ensemble.
Right,
It really doesn't. And especially if you talk about the drum corps activity, or even in certain aspects of independent winter guard, those kind of things. Um, you're dealing with everybody there, and especially if you get a group at the level of a Boston Crusaders, everybody there runs their own organization. They all were or are working band directors, guard directors, um, and so to be able to come together and share that vision. I know that you've got to say, okay, I am not the program coordinator of this. I'm going to be flexible and be curious and open. um, there's so much you can gain it personally from it too. It's not just what it does for the kids and the organization. Yeah.
so let me ask you about this before we start to wrap things up.
Mhm.
So you made the decision to go into administration, um, full time from being in the classroom. um, and it's probably awkward putting you on the spot asking this because who knows.
Yeah, yeah.
But what do you ever regret that? do you miss being in the classroom? Do you, if I'm asking this because there's probably some educators on here that are thinking about the very
Right,
thing, depending on the stage of their career. Can you give me some
right.
insight on that? Like what your thought process was with that, and if you have that to do
Yeah.
differently? And
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't mind sharing either, and I may not give you I'm going to give you the real answer for me.
yeah,
Um, well, I mean, first of all, start at the end. I don't regret it at all. Um, but it is also not to say that I don't miss those moments. This past summer was the first time I went to DCI championships since you and I were with the Colts, probably 2018 or so, 2017, 2018. And man, it was, I have dreams. I don't know if you do too, but I still have those dreams that uh, then various ways. I'll try to be brief, but that I'm a performer and I'm somehow still performing in a group. So you make that transition to be a teacher, and then I have countless dreams where I am running an ensemble or I'm teaching an ensemble. And some of those dreams are not there that something's going wrong, or some of those dreams are extremely rewarding where there's that feeling of moving that group. So those moments they always come back to you.
yeah,
But it's not to say that your journey, because I feel like what I'm in right now still it highly impacts a large group of people
sure,
positively to put their life on track and steer and help them discover themselves and their dreams. So the music aspect of it I do miss, but I feel like I wasn't the best musician in the world. I went into this because of that rewarding feeling, and music was kind of the instrument,
I
so to
mean,
say, to the means to get there. And so administration is now the means to get there for me. So yes, I do miss that teaching, and being in the classroom part of it, that personal connection. You don't get that obviously as much as an administrator. A lot of times you're dealing with larger groups. You do get to personalize. You have a staff. You have teachers. You do work with the students,
right,
but you
right,
don't get that daily fix. That you're when you get on the podium and those conversations that you have with students and so on. So yeah, I do miss that aspect of it. But boy, it's just an amazing journey. I still feel so much reward with what I get to do. So there's things I'd like to do. I'm looking at the next chapter. I've got a few more years left with the school system, and yeah, I would love to get back in and be able to clinician or talk or teach and do some things for sure.
yeah, I gotcha,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, if somebody wanted to find you to ask you some questions based on what we talked about tonight, or just in general, what's the best way to get a hold of you or find you?
Yeah. So you can, either good old fashioned email or call me, tsantino@yahoo.com, or, my number is 954-558-9000. Also on Instagram, Santino125, and on Facebook. So any of those platforms, I'd be happy to respond um, and talk. That would really, I enjoy it. So if anybody that would like to reach out, I'd be more than happy to talk to you, work with you.
Awesome. Well, I knew that this would happen. We spent about 45 minutes, and it seems like 3 or 4, and I could probably talk to you.
Yeah,
But
I know.
I'm hoping some people get something out of listening to this conversation, and I appreciate you sharing yourself with us.
Boy, thank you so much, Howard. You're a dear lifelong friend, and I know that there's countless people that feel the same way I do about you, and I'm just have so much gratitude that we've had such a good long relationship, and hopefully lots of years to come. And I appreciate you, and I really appreciate what you're doing. This is such a great platform to really move things forward, and not just leadership, but to help in all aspects of people's lives. So I'm so happy for you, proud of you, and I want to thank you.
Uh,
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tommy. All right, you take good
All
care.
right.
Thanks to all our listeners.
Yes.
We'll see you next time.
All right.